Hello everyone and welcome back into not the shop. This is the backyard. Welcome to the backyard. And this is probably going to look a lot different by the time this video ends. So let me give you a quick rundown as to what all we're going to be doing here. So we're going to be ripping out the grass behind me. We have gravel going down, electrical going in, shade structures going up. So with that said, let me show you a little bit as to what we're working with to start out. Now before we actually start, I'd like to actually address why we're doing this in the first place, because your first thought might be, Wesley, why the heck are we doing this? And what does this have anything to do with woodworking? So let me explain here. So if you guys have been seeing the last several videos, if you notice at the end when I'm spraying or finishing or painting, everything that I do in regards to that is all done out in the backyard. And the reason for that is because in the front yard we aren't allowed to have anything out on the driveway, and it's a really big pain. There's cars, I don't want to spray anything onto them. There's a lot of things I just can't do in the front yard. So in the backyard, this is where I've been working. And I know that this space that I just showed you has a lot of potential if it were to be set up right. And because I'm in California, it gets extremely hot, and in the past I've had to paint and finish in the evening time or early in the morning time because it gets super hot during the day. The idea is that if I were to have the shade structures, a nice ground, that it would be efficient, it would be a lot quicker, and it would actually give me a little bit more space to work. And now there's one other part that I'd like to show you. I think I've shown you this a couple times on camera before. We have a tarp set up with some wood storage underneath. So my thought is, because we're already going to be doing all of the work over here with the gravel, getting that looking nice and lovely, I thought, hey, what the heck, you know, I'd like a little bit more storage and this could look a little bit nicer as well. So we're going to be doing gravel this whole section of the yard as well. So I'm first going to run over to Home Depot and grab a hedge trimmer and some landscape fabric, and hopefully that should cover me for the first little bit, because what I like to do is strip everything off and then see how the fabric lays down before I go and order the gravel. So off to Home Depot. Before laying down the landscape fabric, the first thing that we needed to do was strip off all of the old bark from the ground, and there was a decent bit of this, so this took a good hour or so to get the entire backyard cleaned up. Also, I should mention that we aren't going to be putting down gravel in the entire backyard, but rather in only the sections that I'm going to be working in. And in the other parts, we're going to be putting down bark, which you'll see here in a little bit. And this is one of those things where if you're doing one thing, you might as well finish the project and do everything else. The backyard needed a little bit of love anyway, so this is the perfect time to do that. Now, because the grass was already dead, the sod cutter had a little bit more difficult time actually cutting through the grass. There really isn't any easy way to go about doing this. It is one of those things where it's just a labor-intensive task and you just have to get through it. I am completely exhausted. I had my brother help me out with the end of it because I was on a major time crunch trying to get the Home Depot rentals back in time. So the hardest stuff was done actually today. So the grass was torn out. Tomorrow we're going to take out the transition pieces and level everything out for the gravel. So that's about it for day one, and the work that I was doing was pretty exhausting. So the rest of this project should be a little bit more fun. The sod cutter is a pretty gnarly machine, and the last thing I would want to do would be to damage it, so I stayed a little bit away from the concrete, and I just had to clean that up with the pickaxe here. With the previous landscaping that was in the yard, in the back corner you could see that there was kind of a mound that had some flowers and some rocks on it. With the gravel, because I want it nice and flat, we had to take this out. So my brother and I here are just basically leveling this out and just kind of fanning it into the rest of the yard. And this is where the nightmare began. Both of these have like deep gashes in them, and then those layers still like melted together, so it's impossible to unroll because it'll just tear. And then I looked online and everywhere is completely sold out of landscape fabric, which I guess is because of everything going on. People want their backyards to look nice because I guess they're spending more time out there or something. So what ended up happening was, instead of putting the landscape fabric down where the bark was going, I just thought, okay, we'll put the bark down on the dirt. It's not the end of the world. We've done that before in the past, so it shouldn't be an issue. And with that, I was able to get the bark off of the driveway. However, I still had about 5 yards of gravel sitting on the driveway. So you'll see this a little bit later in the video, but I brought the rest of the gravel in. And essentially, I'll have to move this gravel twice because I brought it into the backyard once, and then I'll move it into its final place afterwards. So in hindsight, I probably should have waited to purchase the bark and the gravel until I had the landscape fabric all the way down. This sounds a little bit confusing right now, but hopefully later in the video it should make sense. Now, because I'm probably going to get asked what the gravel is that I'm using, let me answer that really quick right now. So the gravel that I'm putting down here is 3/4 crushed gravel, and I think it was just over $50 per yard, and I ordered a total of 5 yards of this. I know that they use this on driveways and on roads sometimes, and I thought that with this, over time, you know, it'd pack in and it'd make for a nice walking surface. Our landscape fabric finally showed up. Now this is the first of 3 rolls. As you can see behind me, the gravel is still in mounds, and hopefully this roll should cover at least this first little bit. So let's get to it. As the last of the gravel gets put into place on this side of the yard, the next thing we're going to be doing is tackling the side yard and putting the rest of the gravel over there. However, the first thing we need to do is move all of the lumber on that side. I try to save as many of the offcuts as I can from various projects, and this is kind of the accumulation of that. And also, as you can probably guess, there isn't any room in the shop for storing all of this lumber, hence why it's all outside. I know this isn't an ideal situation for the wood, but it's what I gotta work with. It's probably been just over a year since I put this lumber storage in the backyard, and I decided not to move the cinder blocks because I remember it took a decent bit of time to get them nice and flat and level. And I have to say, this newer landscape fabric that I ended up using is so much nicer than the stuff that I was using at first. and I'm really happy that I picked out this product. The goal eventually is to build some sort of structure that would allow me to store more lumber and plywood on the side yard, but for now I think I'm just going to put the lumber back in place and then tackle that project separately down the road. The last task is to clean up all of the scrap wood that is piled along the house, and I'd like to move this a little bit further back to the side yard so it's not really an eyesore anymore. And also you'll see here I'll put in a nice walkway and add some more bark. The last task is going to be setting up the shade canopies. I purchased two 10x10 pop-up canopies that will hopefully cover enough of the backyard to where I could spray even when it's super hot out and I'll have enough shade. I also like the versatility of having not only two canopies, but also the ability to fold it up and move it into a different location. If ever I wanted to put these on the driveway, I could then do that as well. There's also plenty of room on the gravel where if I were to spray a larger cabinet or something that wouldn't fit under the canopy, I could spray that in that area. And now on the side yard, I'm excited because now I have kind of a blank slate that I could do whatever I want with. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but it should be down the road very soon. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was a little bit different style. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That's pretty much all I have for this one, and take care.